Hey everyone. Hello. Welcome. Welcome. I see a couple of people have joined in already. Really glad to have everyone here. And quick question for you guys. As you guys are joining in, just drop everything in the chat. Whatever questions you have, whatever concerns you have, any comments, anything, drop everything in the chat. We'll just get started in a minute as people are continuing to join in. Uh, Why don't you guys tell me to break the ice a little? Why don't you guys tell me where you guys are joining in from? Just drop it in the chat and let us know where you guys are joining in from. I always love seeing how spread out our group really is. So yeah, just drop it in the chat. Tell me where you guys are joining from. I see someone saying they're joining in from UK. UK again, very nice. Oh, we have someone from Switzerland. That's amazing. Awesome. How's it going? How's the weather? Oh, so cool. Well, we've people joining in from Johannesburg, South Africa. Awesome. Yeah, just keep dropping into the chat, guys. For people who are just joining in, any questions that come up during this entire session, feel free to drop it in the chat. I'm gonna go over all the housekeeping rules in a minute as people are continuing to join. But yeah, I'm gonna introduce ourselves as well in a minute. We haven't started yet. Just drop it in the chat and tell me where you guys are coming from. Let's just get started in a minute. Hi Tim, how's it going? I see that you're also joining in from UK. All right, let's get started then. Perfect. I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Sudesh. How's it going, everyone? And I will be your host today. I work at the growth team at Estera Software, and I spend a lot of my time talking to finance and operations teams about the exact problems that we are going to be covering today. Joining me are the two people that I am super excited to have on today. We have Aisha Amjad, who is an AI product architect, a researcher, and a product leader. She specializes in enterprise AI automation, specifically for invoice automation, documents intelligence, and workflow automation. And she has led several award-winning revenue-generating AI product in their developments. She's worked with a lot of prospects and she has deep expertise in AP operations and automation. She's going to be giving us the real picture of what's happening in the industry. And then we have Hira Asif, who is a data solutions engineer. She specializes again in AI driven data extraction, document processing, and enterprise integration. Hira is going to be walking us through a live demo of DocSpire later in this session. All right, guys, so before we begin, I just wanted to tell you guys a few housekeeping rules, as you call it. Any questions that come up for you guys, drop it in the chat or drop it in the Q&A box, and we will get to them, all of them, towards the end. We're going to have a long Q&A session and we're going to answer every question that you guys have. So any concerns, any questions throughout our presentations, throughout the conversation that we'll be having or the demo, just drop them in the chat. And guys, be sure to stick around till the end because we're going to give away a £100 gift card, but this is only valid for the people that are present till the end. So yeah, be sure to stick around with us, and let's kick things off. All right, now I want to start things off by understanding truly where you guys are coming from. So, and I'll do this essentially by taking the temperature of the room in form of a poll. I'm gonna be making a poll live right now, and answer honestly. This one just takes 10 seconds and give me your honest feedback. Tell me how automated in yours is your invoice processing today. I'm gonna make the poll live right now. There you go. And yeah, there you go. Tell me how automated your invoice processing is today, and we're gonna get started in a minute. Go ahead, select your answers. There you go. The results have started to come in. Aisha, Hira, you take a look at this. People are saying that they're still mostly manually processing invoices today in this day and age. That's the leading answer. It's like still going. People are still responding. Give me your answer, guys, honestly. And what do you think about this, Aisha? Hira.
I mean, it's a safe bet, right? Especially when you talk about, hey, in this day and age, there is so much noise. So this, with regards to the products that are out there, I was reading a Forrester report just a couple of months ago that said that the barriers to entry because of AI has definitely reduced, and hence there are so many new entrants claiming to do document processing, and so to actually get through that noise and actually get the signal, true
Mm-hmm,
signal, is getting very difficult. So I do
mm-hmm,
understand if people are still, consider manual as a safe bet, or they think that, hey, there's so many options out there. Maybe having manual is a good option. At least that's some of the things that I have also heard from
mm-hmm.
our prospects. Yeah.
All right, guys, let's get started then. Perfect. I see some people are still joining in. Just to go over it again, just drop whatever questions that you have, just drop them in the chat, and we'll get to all of them at the end. We're just getting started. And Aisha, based on the poll that we just took and the answers that we just got from the audience, I want to start with the big picture, right? Because I think
Hmm.
a lot of people on this call are navigating the same thing, and that is AI is everywhere right now. Every team has it on their homepage, they have it in their pitch decks, they have it in their operations. But what about AP and finance operations specifically? What are you actually seeing on the ground? How are these teams utilizing AI, and is it real transformation for them, or do you think it's mostly hype?
Okay, so you're absolutely right to this. AI has become an everyday norm now. A part of our lives, just like our cell phones. And every vendor in the market has slapped the word AI on their product for mostly for marketing speak. So it isn't exactly easy to tune out the noise and catch the signal. But in
Mm-hmm,
finance operations specifically, I definitely see a real opportunity. And it is commendable that financial sector is showing positive openness to this AI revolution, despite all the noise, challenges, and the open research questions, right? And for that, I would like to share three statistics that I think are worth paying attention that you see on your screen. So the first one is the 75% of UK financial services firm are already using AI in their operations in some form, right? In one way or another. And this is a statistic from Bank of England and FCA survey. And this shows that AI-driven finance is no longer just an early adoption talk that it was back in 2024, right? It's now becoming mainstream because majority of this industry is already using it, or showing a lot of openness to it. Now, we have to understand that this is also an industry with most document heavy processes. So they are trying to automate the most daunting and repetitive tasks. And most of them have implemented, an off the shelf solution that is running 3 times faster than manual teams, which means that the work of 10 hours has now been
mm-hmm,
reduced to three and maybe even more.
mm-hmm,
At least that's what the statistics tell us. For a business that lives and dies by cash flow and early payment discounts, like the financial sector, this isn't exactly a small number. Would you say that, right? And third is that the one that usually lands is the average cost to process a single invoice manually is over
mm-hmm,
15 pounds. 15
mm-hmm.
pounds to this. So multiply
Yeah.
that by however many invoices your team handles in a month, and that number gets uncomfortable very quickly. Right. And
Mm-hmm,
this number is basically the cost of your expensive finance team spending time on the grunt work of
mm-hmm.
data entry instead of what they might have, originally been hired for. And again, looking at the poll results, I guess most of us are still in the early stages of this, which is totally fine. You're
Mm-hmm.
in the right place.
Exactly. And for what you just mentioned, blows my mind. 15 pounds per invoice, that's like a lot.
Yeah.
That's single invoice taking that much time, that much money to process. I mean, wow. Just that's truly that's like truly amazing and too scared, to be honest. Uh, uh, yeah, and as we saw in the polls, right? As we saw, like from the people answering, you just mentioned. I just want to linger with this point a little longer. So basically, what do you think about the teams that are starting to move past this hype and they're starting to move into action? For all the teams that haven't implemented AI automation for this thing specifically, what do you think the evolution looks like in practice for them?
Okay. So let me make this a little less abstract, right? And what you see, this is a really good slide. What you see is, the before and after of what it looks like for an AP team. Now, before automation, the picture is something most of you will recognize. And sadly, document processing is one of those problems that hides in plain sight. Teams just learn to work around it. People rekey numbers from PDFs into ERP. They check the inbox for any invoice arrival. The reviewer who has to, a reviewer who is opening, three different windows just to verify a single field. And we get these queries over and over again. In fact, just yesterday, someone asked on our live chat that this is what they want to do, that they want to manually look the values up,
Mhm,
whereas there are already automations available. And probably, more of the frustrating part of their task is chasing the approvals over emails, and which means that invoices are getting stuck for days just because people are on holidays, or have some other engagements. And because of that, this also leads to the missing out on early payment discounts, because no one is or no system is catching the deadlines and firing alerts for it, right?
mhm,
And your best finance people, the ones that you probably hired for their sound judgment, are stuck doing this low level data entry instead of the analysis. So the
mhm,
cost is real to this, but it accumulates quietly in the form of strategic drag and opportunity cost of those people, about what they could have been doing instead, right? And that's why I said that it's able to hide in plain sight.
mhm,
After automation, and I mean real automation with intelligence on the top, the picture changes. The system is able to access all source points like emails, vendor portals, paper scans, maybe electronic feeds, read invoice, understand the context, match it against POs, routes it through the right approval path, and post it into your either database or ERP, whatever system you're using.
mhm,
So what we're saying is that is touchless for majority of the invoices, right? And humans only
mhm,
step in for genuine exceptions. And
mhm,
also the role of the team fundamentally shifts. They stop being data entry clerks, and they are, what you see, like conductor of an orchestra. They set
mhm.
the rules, and they only handle exceptions. They focus mainly on then moving forward on vendor relationships and strategy, which is frankly a much better job and probably a much easier team to hire as well as retain.
And I love that analogy that you made, that someone who's using a bunch of AI agents, they're like a conductor in an orchestra, and they have this
Yeah.
entire symphony of bots in front of them. I love that you made this distinction. But I feel like that the before picture that we have on our slide right now, that's painfully familiar for a lot of teams in our audience, right? And I think the after that you just described, it raises a question, and I want to put this question to the audience right now, to all the people who are listening in, because I have a feeling that their answers are going to be telling, honestly, and they're going to be telling a story. So I want to launch another poll, Aisha and Hera, and why don't you guys see, and why don't we just all see together what people are reacting to this? I'm going to make the poll live right now, and the question is basically, guys, where does your team spend most of its time in invoice processing today? Be honest and pick the one option that stings the most. And there you go. The poll is live. Yeah, and we'll just see where you guys are coming from. There you go. People started answering right now, and can you guys see, and Aisha, would you care to comment about this?
Yeah, it's mostly all of the above. Yeah. I mean, the pain isn't limited to, I guess, a single corner or a single stage. That I definitely agree with. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, the majority is saying all of the above. So
Yeah.
essentially everything, like handling
Yeah.
invoices and then matching and chasing approvals and then e-invoicing systems and pushing
Yeah.
data into their ERP systems. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it does take a lot of time, even if someone is looking to extract data out of an invoice, validate data. And today this takes for a manual process, it takes around 5 to 15 minutes to do this. And when you add on top of this, if you add comparison or cross-referencing for AP matching with purchase orders, invoices, vendor codes, different documents, so this only slows the process more. So this requires an end-to-end AI-driven process that can automate this whole AP use case, but also
Mhm.
deal with different formats of invoices or any documents that are coming in.
Makes sense. And based on your response, Aisha and Hira, just judging based on your expressions, I feel like this is not news to you, and you guys are used to dealing with this, and you guys know what the problems are. So let's go towards that. But before we move towards that, I have a super interesting question for you, Aisha, because right now we've established that the problem is real, right, and the cost is also real. We just established that, and the need to fix this is also super real. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Because the next question that most teams ask me as well, and I'm sure you've come across this as well, is do we buy a solution or do we just build one? Because with the rise of all these agentic coding platforms right there out there, like Cursor and OpenAI Codex and Claude Code, you can just spin up a prototype really, really fast, right? And an engineer walks in the room and they say that I can build this myself. Why do we pay for something that we can build ourselves? What do you say when you hear that, Aisha?
Um, okay, I have this conversation at least twice a week, so this, and it's a fair question, right? I want to answer it very honestly. Because I'm an engineer and I genuinely love the fact that building is easier than it has ever been. But there's a trap in that thinking, and I want to walk, everyone through it. Now, in 2026, it is genuinely very easy to build a prototype. You can sit with Claude Code or maybe Cursor, spend an afternoon, and get something that reads an invoice and spits out a JSON. Very simple. Or even ChatGPT can do that for you. I can assure you. It will look like it works. You may demo it to your team, and they would definitely be impressed. But that is not the hard part. It is often just the 20% of the entire process. The hard part is everything that happens after the prototype. So there's an anecdote that I would like to talk a bit about here. A couple months ago, my 10-year-old nephew asked me to build him this treasure maze game, basically. And I used Claude Code, or I don't remember, it was Cursor. And
Mhm.
and the very first version that came out together, according to whatever he brought, what he wanted, that came out in about an hour, and he was starstruck, right? And then very quickly his requests kept piling up, like, hey, I have 10 levels, can have different characters, an in-game shop to spend the coins, different villains, hurdles, and we kind of stopped when he asked for a character that looks like him, right? Because these models have their context limits, and they would start, I noticed that it started polluting the clean code that it generated earlier. Now, and that is just the maze game for a 10-year-old. Nobody gets audited for a glitch showing an incorrect coin, right? Uh, Imagine the same gap between demo and the system that holds up in production for your accounts payable team, right? In fact, like, I want to connect it to a survey that MIT did, studying 300 enterprise AI projects, and it says that the survey results were that 95% of those AI projects delivered zero ROI, not because AI failed, but because everything around it did. And you have to understand that once you put this prototype document processing solution anywhere near real finance operations, the list of things you need to build explodes. For example, you need validation rules, you need audit trails for compliance, you need exception handling for invoices that do not fit the happy flow. You need monitoring, because when it breaks at 2 in the morning, somebody needs to know what happened, right? So you need consistent outputs, and your ERP does not care that the LLM felt creative today. So I guess
Mhm.
these are some of the scenarios that we need to consider.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think a lot of people on this call have actually lived that story as well. So I want to ask this question again from the audience, for the
Hmm.
people listening in right now. And again, let me launch another poll, and let me ask you directly: have you ever considered, or have you ever explored building an in-house automation system, or perhaps an invoice automation system in-house? I'm gonna make the poll live right now. There you go. And yeah, let me know. Let me know your answers, guys. And the results are starting to come in again. Aisha and Hira. There you go. People are saying the majority answer is that yes, they've tried doing it, but it's complicated. That's still the leading answer. And some people are also saying it's a mix between the three. That buying sounds better, and some people are saying that they're still exploring options. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, at least what I see is that it's actually good that people are trying it out, that they have
Mm-hmm.
tried this out. I would absolutely recommend, if you have not tried out these vibe coding tools, you should at least once. Try
Mm-hmm.
to solve your problems, because that will also make you understand, have a deeper understanding of your process, and maybe when you eventually, when you decide to go buy off the shelf, you would have a
Mm-hmm.
better list, a checklist of what do you want, and you would also have a better understanding of, hey, what are the failure points that a system could have. So that's remarkable, that's good.
Okay, an interesting thought though. Let's say someone is actually looking to build in-house, right?
Hmm.
They've decided that okay, they want to build it in-house. Is there a scenario, Aisha, where you think, or where you perhaps recommend or say that building in-house actually makes more sense?
uh the answer is yes. And I would look at a few things. So there's actually two main things, right? So the first one is the scale and complexity of your operations. Do you have, you need to ask and see if you're processing 2 versus 200 versus
Hmm.
2000 invoices a day,
Hmm.
because the scale of operations for each is entirely different. But as I said, try it out, definitely, right? Eventually, most companies that had an in-house setup initially had to move towards an off-the-shelf product, which leads me to my second point, which is this your core business? Right? So my
Hmm.
honest take is that if your core business is invoice processing, is document automation, absolutely build it. But if your
Hmm.
core business is literally anything else, uh, then
Hmm.
the total cost of building and maintaining this yourself is almost always going to be higher than you anticipate. It
Hmm.
will go very fast from £100 to £10,000 to £500,000, and we've seen that. Right, we've heard this from the prospects who are now our users or customers. And similarly, the time to value is almost always going to be longer as well. So, you may
Hmm.
get a month estimate, but then 8 months into the development, and you ask, why is this not in production yet? In fact, I remember having this conversation with Hira, I think you, right? Where you
Hmm.
mentioned that last year there was a prospect that definitely tried this out. And would you like to, share some parts of that?
Yeah, sure. So we had a prospect that came to us and they were trying to process different documents by uploading them to AI tools such as Copilot, ChatGPT, and they were trying to cross-reference a purchase order with an invoice and then an invoice with a vendor code. So they were trying to cross-reference different documents. And in the beginning, it was working for them. They were manually uploading each document, giving the AI tool some instructions, a prompt, but as soon as their volume started increasing, the process started getting really slow. They had to upload each document one by one, reprompt the AI tool for feedback, and also they, they with the volume increase, this wasn't a feasible option anymore. So then they realized that they needed something which is not just an AI tool, but is a whole end-to-end system, which is AI driven, but can also do the AP automation workflow, document processing end to end. And that is something that we will be demoing today.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. So, what if I'm hearing you guys correctly? What you mentioned is that you basically try to build a solution, absolutely, but it's only viable in the case if in the case that you have to process like three invoices, right? And even those are picture pretty perfect invoices. But eventually, as you scale, you would have to move to a viable, what I like to call a battle tested solution so that you can move and grow with that scale. That makes absolute sense. Which actually brings me to the next thing that we're going to talk about, which brings me to Dogspire, Aisha. And for anyone who hasn't come across it yet, tell us what it is. What is Dogspire, and why was this the problem that we chose to solve? Aisha, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. Thank you for that, Sudesh. So a quick bit of context for Sudesh. DocSpire is backed by Astera Software, and Astera has been doing enterprise data integration for over 2 decades. We have customers in Fortune 500 across healthcare, their financial services, mortgage lending, and a lot of other industries. So we're pretty industry agnostic, right? And the AI and data architecture experience that you see on the slide is literally the foundation that DocSpire is built upon. And if we when you ask me, how this came to be, I would say that, we've spent years watching finance teams wrestle with tools that were not built for how their AP operations or their financial operations work. They were rigid template based OCR, that would break every time a new or every time an existing vendor changed their field layout or a new vendor, came into picture. Um, in recent times, these generic AI tools that could read a document but had no idea what to do with it afterwards, or that would even hallucinate the document if it's a long one. And the big enterprise document suites that would usually take 6 to 9 months just to get started, just to
Hmm.
implement. Uh, and we thought this isn't the best way, right? There has to be something that is smart, out of the box, fast to deploy, and built specifically for accounts payable. So
Hmm.
that was the idea.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, honestly. And when I'm talking to prospects outside there, and I see a lot of tools that are in the market, right, claiming to do the same thing, but I feel like that's the exact gap that they miss, right? And a lot of these tools, they would claim full automation. You know them, I know them. People in this chat, problem, the webinar session today, have probably heard of these tools. They claim to have full automation, but the moment a vendor changes their invoice or the layout changes, the whole flow breaks apart. And then the thing is, in reality, invoices arriving imperfectly, that's not the exception. That's essentially the rule of how the world operates, right? So what ends up happening is that the teams have to step in manually and fix things, which defeats the entire point of having a automation tool, if you ask me. So my question to you would be, what actually should someone be looking for when they're evaluating options to choose a tool for invoice processing specifically or automation, and where does Doxpire sit differently?
So here's the thing I want to be very direct about. Every vendor in this space of document processing will tell you that their product handles invoices, and I'm sure they do. What very few of them will tell you is that what happens when an invoice is not perfect. And in the real world scenarios, invoices are almost never perfect to this. So the examples you
Hmm.
see on the screen or on this slide is what real documents look like. They're skewed, rotated. Some contains multiple documents in a single picture. This was sent by one of our customers. And then there are cases where repeated scans leads to faded characters and text, like repeated
Hmm.
scans over the years, right? And most AI tools will fall over on this. They work beautifully on these clean, pretty PDF invoices, and
Hmm.
then breaks the first week you put them on real data, or they will ask you to wait for 5 or 6 months for the system to train
Hmm.
on 500,000 invoices for it to start producing accurate data or healthy data. And we're still just talking about PDFs and paper invoices. Like this has been around for, I don't know, years, right? There's a more pressing issue for this region in the form of e-invoicing that I suppose needs discussion as well as careful consideration.
Hmm. I mean, what is the system that you're talking about? I know that we've talked about invoice extraction, but would you mind telling us how this goes beyond extraction? What do we do beyond extraction? And what is it that you mentioned this about systems which are not invoices, Aisha?
Okay, so starting point, Doxpire capture invoices from any source that you throw at it. I think we have been, we've been saying that so far. Be it email inboxes, for example, vendor portals, scans, manual uploads, EDI feeds particularly. And any document intelligence provider that has worked with EDI formats like Edifect, X12, and they've been around since the 1980s. I
Hmm.
don't think they should have a hard time providing solution for these e-invoices, because what you essentially need is an XML or a JSON parser that can
Hmm.
parse these incoming electronic feeds and validate them. And Estera has an EDI suite entirely that has been doing this for a very long time. So of course we kind of, as I said, inherit that technology or built on top of it. And being compatible with e-invoice exchange providers like PayPal or ZookFed, UBL, it has become a necessity, because the mandate is here in Italy, Belgium, followed by Germany, France, and I think by 2029, most, including UK, would be doing a B2B invoice exchange. And the Gulf countries, I was recently talking to a prospect who operates in UAE, and he said that they are also in the process of transitioning. So any company with global operations needs a tool that not only supports different languages, formats, currencies, but should be able to automatically parse these invoicing formats. So as I said, these are not only parsed but also validated. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I got it. So basically, the extraction part is done for. We're good at
Yeah.
intaking data and ingesting data into the systems. But what happens next is, because the problem isn't just extraction alone, right? That doesn't solve the problem. E-invoicing is also just a small part of it. But if the data isn't accurate or validated, what you're basically doing is just pushing errors downstream faster. So I should tell us how Doxpire would make sure that what comes out is actually usable and ready for processing.
Okay, so on the note of e-invoicing, I mean, it's not just parsing. As I said, there's also validation involved as part
Hmm.
of the exchange, right? And
Hmm.
Doxpire has these validations and AI guardrails built in. So you talk about the traditional stuff like two-way matching, three-way matching, or n-way matching against your ground truths, like for example, purchase orders and receipts. Or you may be talking about duplicate detection, so you do not end up paying the same invoice twice, which is still a very frustrating issue for a lot. Tax validation that we've been talking about, these different VAT validations against your regional rules, as well as custom business rules for approval. So approval workflows usually differ from one company to another, right? There's a lot of steps if you go into enterprises of different industries, particularly. And so there needs to be an ability to set those custom rules. And then there's something called a smart exception handling in Doxpire, which is probably that single feature that AP teams so far have been telling us that they really like it, um, where by which Doxpire flags the things that are actually worth a human looking at. We're talking about genuine exceptions. That means your team is spending time mostly on real issues. And so that's with these validations and guardrails, we've seen that our customers have also been able to cut down costs of
Hmm.
manual reviewing. Even with automation platforms, they would still say that we still have a lot of team members who are still doing manual reviews and data entries. So that has reduced, but also the error cost that is usually a result of corrupted data slowly making
Hmm.
its way into their ERPs or database systems.
Got it. Makes sense. And so basically, we've talked about extraction and data ingestion, and we've talked about validation and how it works. Now, the question that arises is how does it fit into a prospect's existing system? Because we have a lot of these teams and they're using a different tech stack. Every team is different. How does it fit into their existing system? Let's talk about integration, because that's where a lot of vendors out there they fall short. So how are we different, Aisha?
Okay, you can you can have the smartest AI in the world, but if
Uh-huh.
it does not fit into your existing ecosystem, it's going to create more work for you. Unless, of course, you want a system to completely replace your existing process. And the core principle for DocSpire, as I said, it's built on top of Estera's AI integration or integration platform capabilities, is
Hmm.
that we work with what you already have. Your ERP system stays, your accounting system, your payment systems, for example, all your different sources, your emails, your SFTP folders, your vendor portals, EDI feeds, as I said, all of that stays, and DocSpire slots in and makes all of these isolated pieces communicate with each other intelligently. For that, we have around 100 plus pre-built connectors that you can connect with. The system can also do custom integrations, just by the way, via APIs, webhooks, SFTP connections. So anyone who has a built-in internal portals, connections is usually not really a difficult thing or a challenge for us. What
Hmm.
that means in practical terms is that the teams are not disrupting their stack. We're not asking them to, hey, just get rid of this because our system does not work with it, right? We're essentially enhancing their overall processes.
Makes sense. And I just wanted to ask this question because it was right there. Someone just
Yeah.
and asked if we can connect to QuickBooks. So
Yeah.
the
There,
answer
there's
is
a
yes.
yeah, there's a blog on it as well, I'm pretty sure. I think I wrote documentation myself. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Mm.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Aisha. All right, so now we've talked about how the data is captured and data is validated, and now it's also flowing into the right systems. The next, or perhaps I would argue the most important layer is control, because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
finance teams, they don't just want automation. Correct? They need
Yeah.
visibility and they need compliance and they need the ability to manage the process end to end. Aisha, can you walk us through how DocSpire handles tracking, compliance, and workflow automation?
Okay. Well, first of all, I hope this is the last slide, right? Because yeah,
Actually,
it's
yeah,
better
someone
to
was
move to
asking.
the yeah, it's better to move
Exactly.
to the demo. Yeah, but I just hope this is the last slide, right? So first, the tracking and the audit. Every action in DocSpire is tracked. Who did what, when, to which document, and why, with their account, timestamps, even the small edits, right? The
Hmm.
second is the compliance, security, and fraud detection. So if something looks unusual, and by something it would be just a number. If something is a mismatch, it's a
Hmm.
context mismatch, right? Even or a duplicate, or a vendor you have never seen before asking for an unusual amount, the
Hmm.
system automatically flags all of these common scenarios. The single most common question in many AP teams that I've seen is that, hey, where is the invoice, right? Where is the invoice for that inventory or for that purchase order or against that receipt? And the answer is usually that teams hear back is that, okay, let us look through our email inboxes, right? Or let us look for it. With DocSpire, anyone with the access, and this is important, can see exactly where the invoices are in real time, in what stage they're stuck, right? The fourth is custom workflow design. Depending on which industry you operate in, and we have seen that there are, many different variations. For example, if you're operating in manufacturing industry versus retail versus logistics, the AP processes differ from one another. Yeah, and these are, maybe to a human, these are not big variations, but to a system, these are breaking variations. So in
Hmm.
some processes, you would see additional, like we've seen additional documents like packaging list. We have seen vendor codes, being added to the validation process and the matching process and the extraction process. So forcing everyone into a standard workflow creates, I believe, more problems than it solves.
Hmm.
What we say is that if you can describe your process, the system should be able to automate it for you. So that's, I guess, an important part, that most importantly, it gives you a complete oversight of the process. So it's not just automation. So there's it is automation with control,
Hmm.
visibility, as well as accountability at each step. So
Hmm.
that's what we're looking at. And enough from me. Let's just get to the demo. Yeah.
Yes, because I see some people are asking in the chat as well when the demo is going to come up. So we're at that point, guys. All right, so we've covered a lot right now, and we've seen how it translates. You've seen the full picture essentially from capture to validation to integration and now control as well. Now the real question is how does it actually look like in action? So you're absolutely right, Aisha. Let's move away from the slides because we have plenty of slides, and let's move to the product. Let's see how it actually looks like. Hira, Over to you. The floor is yours. Walk us through the demo.
Thank you, Sudesh. I'll share my screen for the DocSpire demo. Let me know when you guys can see it.
And I see some great questions coming in, guys. Absolutely. So, yeah, keep them coming. I just wanted to mention this, and we're going to get to all of them towards the end of the session. And yes, Hira, we can see your screen.
Okay, so here is the homepage for DocSpire. This is the web page, the homepage that you get to when you log in. I have logged into this, and this is the first screen that I see. This gives me a mini dashboard to see the number of documents that I have processed, the pages in each document that are processed, and also the average AI accuracy rate for all the documents that have been processed. It also gives me some information on the integrations that I'm connected with. I will also cover the integrations part as well for the different applications and platforms that we can integrate with. But this is just a mini dashboard that gives you some details on your workflows that are running inside DocSpire. So this is the start page for DocSpire. I'll just quickly go over the two samples that I have for this demo that we're processing using DocSpire. These are two invoice samples. This has some typical headers, the invoice number, the date, the due date, some address details. Then it also has a tabular section for some line items. This is one invoice that I have. Then I have another invoice that looks different. But the best thing about DocSpire is, as Aisha mentioned earlier, that this does not work using a rigid template. This is a templateless solution that is AI driven, so it can handle any format, any layout, any structure of the document that is coming in. And it doesn't even have to be an invoice, it can be any document. But just for this demo, we're focusing on invoices, and this is another sample that we have. It is perfectly capable of handling a scanned document, a PDF, a text file, an Excel, even images. So it can be any document type, any format. And there's just one process that is extracting data out of all these documents. So let's go to the document queue section where we can see the documents that have been processed. So this is a view of the document queue. Here you can see the document ID. There is a unique ID associated with every document that you're processing. And next we have the file name, we have the type of document. This is once DocSpire receives a document, be it on your email, be it a manual ad hoc upload, or even connecting to your ERP, your CRM system for the input of these documents, it automatically classifies or labels a document as a receipt, as an invoice, as a repair order. So that is what you see here. And then we also have the status for each document. So if the document is processed completely, we can see the success status, but we have all these status for the documents. In error, in review, whether it's in the pending state, which means that it is waiting to be processed. So this is some information on the document queue status. Then we also have the source, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's a manual upload, an email, or whatever source of the document that is. Um, so let's take a look at a document that has been processed. And to do that, I'll click on the View Results button here on my right. And this is where you see the original document on the left, the PDF. And then here on my right, we see the extracted output. So this is divided into two sections. The first, the top section is a summary. This is for the headers of the document. We can see the invoice number has been extracted, the invoice date, the due date, and so on and so forth. So these are the headers that have been extracted out of the document. And then if I just scroll down, these are the line items or the tabular section of the document or the invoice that you see here. So we can see that we have the description, we have the quantity, we have the unit price. So everything that was present there inside the document, it has extracted that. We can also you can also directly view data here as we're doing this right now, but you can also write this data to some table in your CRM, your ERP, or you can also um, save this as an Excel. I just quickly do an export. So we also have this capability where from the UI, you can do easy exports. There you go. Now this is downloaded in my local directory, but you can also automatically make this a step in your workflow inside DocSpire that you can write the file to a bucket in S3. So you can completely customize this to how you want it. Just for this demo, this is how I'm showing it right now, but you can definitely customize this. So this is an example of a document that has been processed, but I quickly go over to the document configuration section on my left to show you where I have defined the layout or the schema for the invoice. So here it's giving me a drop down for the different document types. You can definitely add to this. This is the list that I have for this demo, and for the invoice, this is where I have given it the layout, the fields that I want to be extracted out of the document. Let's say that you want to remove any fields from here, you want to remove the subtotal field, the tax total, you can easily do that. So this is completely customizable. Let's say that you have a different layout, a different schema that you extract data out of from invoices. So this is where you can make this change to customize it for your workflow. Now going back to document queue, um, this also has some documents that are sitting in the review state, and this is because DocSpire already has some guardrails that are already there by default and are applied to each document that arrives. But you can also add custom validation rules here. I'll open this section to show you how you can add your business rules here. And every time you receive an invoice, these rules are applied to your document. So here is where we have some rules for matching performing a match between an invoice, a receipt. So it's comparing data that is there on the invoice that's received with a receipt or a purchase order that's already saved in a database somewhere that it can easily integrate to. So this is the validation rules section, and on the top is where you can add your validation rules. But this is a library that I have right now, and all the documents that I am processing are validated against each rule here. We also have a column dedicated to the assigned reviewer. So if any validation rule fails for a document that DocSpire has processed, you will see that the assigned reviewer will be prompted to approve or reject the document. So this is where you can define the assigned reviewer. So we have a lot of these rules. This is a whole library that I'm using. And to go back to document queue, I'll show you how this looks like when a document is in the review state. So this is a document that is in review. I'll click on the review button to show you the document and also the validation rule that has failed. So any validation criteria that does not pass when a document is processed, it is highlighted here, and you can see an alert with the exact message for what did not match or what criteria failed. So here the line total is incorrect. The quantity with the unit price is not matching the line total amount, and that is why DocSpire has flagged this as an error. Now it is also giving me a message here for the document requires approval from one reviewer, and is also giving me some information on the assigned reviewer for this approval. So I am not this team member, but I will, when I try to approve this document here, this gives me an error since I am not the assigned reviewer. So you can, as a part of your workflow, you can add the relevant reviewers for each validation rule. And whenever your document fails a validation criteria, one, you will be notified, and two, the person can come here and approve or review or reject the document. So one feature that was requested by a lot of our customers and is really valued is the document history feature. So I'll quickly click on this icon here to show you that DocSpire not only shows us the document that has been the extracted data or the validation rules that have failed, but it also shows us the entire step-by-step process that a document went through. So the first step was to extract or upload the document. It is giving some information on the source, if this was a manual upload, then also the number of pages inside this document, the type of document as I mentioned earlier, and then it is showing us that the document is sent for extraction. Next, it is giving us some information on the accuracy. So this is around 99.5%, and this means this is the accuracy or the confidence rate for the extraction process that was performed on this document. The next step you can see is the validation process. As we just saw that there was one rule that failed, and here DocSpire is giving us some information on the total number of validation rules that this document was checked against and how many rules failed. Final step that you see here inside document history is when this document was sent for review, and also who it was assigned to, and also why this document was sent for review. So it gives you a complete picture of why this document failed a validation criteria and exactly what is wrong with this document and who needs to review this. So this is how you can not only process your document, extract data, but also apply your custom business rules and also add your approval process into the end-to-end workflow pipeline. So now I'll quickly go over the integration section. As Aisha mentioned that this can integrate with your system. You wouldn't have to change anything about your current process in order to use DocSpire or include DocSpire as part of your process. Here is the integration section, and it can integrate with almost anything that you have. It can read from your email inbox. As soon as an email is received, it is constantly watching the email inbox that you configure here. And as soon as an email is received, it automatically downloads the attachment, sends it to your workflow, and so on and so forth. So here we have these different options, and if there's any application that you do not see listed here, that just means that DocSpire can connect using REST APIs with any third-party application. And if there is a backend database connection available, then we can easily use that as well. So right now I just have two integrations. One is email integration, the other one is a webhook, but this is just for the demo. So just to let you guys know, we have multiple integration options available. And I think this was also a question in the chat, right? So this.
Yes, it was. Yep.
So let me know if this answers your question. So here we've covered integrations. This is one question that we had. And then the best part about this process is that it comes with automated monitoring. So as soon as a process is completed, you can configure email notifications, or this can even connect to Slack. Let's say that you want to receive a notification there. You can easily configure that as well. So here I have added these two emails. So whenever a document completes, I want to receive immediate notification. But this is the list of actions that you can choose from. You can get a notification whenever there is a document processing that has failed, if there is human review required. So this will be sent to the assigned reviewer whenever there is a validation criteria that fails. And then we have these different options that you can select from. We also have a capability for dashboards. It's called analytics here, the analytics section. And for this demo, I have this reading or connecting to the databases that have stored all the documents that have been processed using DocSpire. So I'll just quickly go over the invoice processing workflow. Since that is what we're focusing on for this demo. And here is where you see the invoice volume per vendor, the total number of invoices that are received. It is giving some insights on the auto approval rate based on your approval workflows, and also the average processing time per document. It has different point of views here. You can also change this according to how you want it, but it's also giving us details on giving details per vendor. So it is giving me the list of vendors that I have processed on the total invoices, the total volume. So all these details you can also add here in the analytics section. So this is all for the demo, guys. Aisha, Sudesh, let me know if there's anything that you want me to talk about.
No, this is amazing. Thank you so much for this great walkthrough. I feel like this was super clear and it brought everything that we were talking about, we were discussing, Aisha and I, everything that we discussed on the slides. It brings everything discussed to life. Now, seeing the product is awesome. It's great. But that's one thing, correct? Um, is there the real question is, and I think this is something a lot of the audience will also be thinking about, what does this look like in a real environment with real volumes and real constraints? How does this look like? Just tell us about something.
Sure. So For this, like to answer your question, I'll share a real world example from one of our customers. This really highlights this example that I'm going to share really highlights where traditional document processing does not work. So we often highlight this particular customer for two key reasons. One is the volume that they were dealing with, and also the fact that they had already very extensively evaluated the market and they were deeply disappointed. So, over a span of nearly 3 years, they had tested 4 to 5 major document processing platforms, some of the biggest names out there. But despite all the promises, most solutions delivered only about 10 to 15% of what they were expecting. So, this led to a lot of frustration and disappointment on their side. Um, at that time, they were processing highly complex documents. I'll give you some details on that, why I say they were processing some highly complex documents. So they had around 3,000 different invoice layouts. The documents or the invoices that they were receiving, they were scanned, they were skewed. The document was coming in tilted, the scanned document, the orientation was not right. Sometimes the document contained some gibberish text, some watermarks, and they even had inconsistent structures. So traditional rigid template based tools could not handle the level of complexity they had. And maintaining thousands of templates and workflows wasn't a very feasible option for them for their relatively small team. But
Mhm.
fast forward to 2024. With our AI-driven templateless approach, that was combined with significantly improved OCR to handle their scanned documents. Um, we were able to run a proof of concept and we were able to meet their requirements. So they are very happy customers today and they process around 10,000 to 15,000 invoices per month.
Mhm.
That is roughly around 250 to 300 invoices per day. And that is across 1,000 plus suppliers. So the key difference today is that they're no longer managing thousands of templates and workflows manually. So they've been with us for over a year and they're very satisfied customers. So they will continue to expand their usage.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Hera. And I feel like this again puts everything into perspective. Everything that we've been talking about, to show a real life scenario like this. So thanks again for the superb demo and sharing this real life example with us. And guys, for everyone in the audience that stuck around with us, we're approaching the end of the session. But before we end, Aisha, one last question from you, because we've covered a lot of ground today, right? And if someone just walks away and remembers only one thing, what would that be?
Okay, so I think this is something that I stress upon. I've been stressing upon for some time, and that is, we've spent, as I said initially, that we've spent years watching finance teams wrestle with, the tools that have promised them the world, right? But they were not built for how their operations works. Doxpire kind of flips that equation around. So that it starts with the industry intelligence and then adapts to how your accounts payable processes works, because every different industry, as I mentioned before, has slightly different processes, slightly different documents, validation rules, and so on and so forth, their own nuances, and even that differs from company to company as well. And so to put this point more simply, that I want to drive home here is that if you can define your accounts payable process, right, Doxpire can automate it using its agentic as well as the adaptive architecture. So that is probably one of the main points that I want to drive home.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And on that note, I want to launch a one last poll, a going away poll, call it. This one's a bit lighter, I promise, for everyone listening in the audience. Something to think about as you're imagining life on the other side of this. And I'm gonna make the poll live right now. There you go. And this is you as you imagine your life on the other side of this. If invoice processing and invoice automation worked perfectly, exactly the way that you wanted, what would you do with all that extra time? And I promise I'm not going to be surprised by some of these
I go on
answers.
vacations. I need that.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah.
There you go. And I see the majority leading answer right now is also that people will go on a long coffee break. So
I go on
awesome.
vacation, sure.
Yeah, and people are just like, yeah, someone saying that they're gonna improve reporting and insights. So yeah, awesome. I mean, a lot of people are
So
actually
dedication. Yeah, such dedication there as well. Yeah.
yeah, people still want to work. I mean, come on. Awesome. All right, now let's get to your questions. I see a lot of questions have been piling up, but before we get into the questions, before we answer all of that, just a small point here. If you guys want to see DocSpire running on your own documents, you want to pull your phone out right now and scan this QR code that's in front of your screen. And you can book a personalized session with one of our experts, and they will walk you through your specific workflows, your formats, your ERP. It takes about 30 minutes, and I promise it's going to be worth every one of those minutes. So take out your phone right now and scan this QR code, and you can book this personalized session with one of our experts. All right, I've been watching the Q&A box throughout, and there are some pretty good questions in here. So let's jump right in, Aisha and Hira, and I'll ask the questions, and you guys can answer them however you feel like. Let's start off with a question that we got really early on in this session, I think, and I do apologize because I see that you guys also started answering this question. So let's just get to the question. So we've seen this question is from Steve, and Steve is asking that they have seen a lot of AI tools that promise the world but do not perform in reality. How do we properly assess what will work in our environment?
Okay. I think I have answered that question, but and Hera as well when you were talking about gap
Yeah.
solutions example. So we have something called a POC stage, which is proof of concept, right? There's
Hmm.
also free trial available, so you may want to try out your own invoices or documents. And in case because it's still a free trial, right? So we do not have a lot of heavy duty or resource intensive dedicated
Hmm.
towards those free trials. So if you
Hmm.
have extremely complex documents, scenarios those messy scans, please talk to us, schedule a call with us, and we would have we have this proof of concept stage that gap solutions went through, that a lot of our other customers went through, and after being satisfied processing all of their documents for 2 weeks straight, then they were convinced that okay, yeah, this seems like something we can you know uh, uh, put our
Hmm.
all our eggs in. So that's how I would like to answer it.
Got it. We got another question from Kai Parker, and
Mhm.
they asked that does the service offer a review of PDF invoices from the companies to be reviewed from compliance to common mistakes and respond accordingly?
Hera, I think since you're the product champ, I think you can answer this pretty well.
Sure. So definitely we've also covered this in the demo. If there is any validation rule or any criteria that you want your documents to be checked against, then there is definitely a step in your workflow that you can add. And there's any check that fails, or if a document is not complying with any policy or any rule that you set, that document will be flagged for review. And until and unless the team member, that is the assigned reviewer, has not reviewed the document or has approved the document, it will be waiting to be to receive a response for the approval. Aisha, please feel free to add.
No, no, I think you've covered the details. Yeah, that's how pretty much it is. There's also a lot of material content
Hmm.
that we've written on this. I think there's also demo videos on this particular aspect. But anyone who wants to delve deeper into this, please feel free to reach out.
Hmm.
And then the rules that I just talked about, these are the custom rules that you can add, but there are already default rules that does
Yep,
catch any common mistakes for these document types.
that we call guardrails. Yeah.
Awesome. The next question, guys, is from Nishant, and he's asking how does the solution ensure compliance with regulations like the GST Act India or global frameworks like SOX compliance?
Okay, again, that's also a good question. So what we essentially do is that first, there's a two-layer process to most of the compliance values, right? And usually that's what we've seen working for a lot of the companies around the world in different regions. So the first
Mm-hmm.
is that we use AI or the engine to extract all the key fields, all the validations and tax fields
Mm-hmm.
and text points, rates, and amounts, um, even if the format is different. And then we apply the validation logic that is specific to that region or specific to that country. Right, and a lot of the times those rules are again, as I said, as Hera also mentioned, to us those are basically custom rules for that region. They're not built in, but they're custom rules, and they're quite easy to just bring in. In fact, I think for one of our customers, we also were fetching data directly from one of the government portals where some of these checklist existed that they wanted their documents to wet against, and so we would extract the data from those government portal as well as their documents, uh, do all the validations one by one against that checklist, and then generate a final report for them that, hey, this out of 15 points, 10 looked great, three we're not sure about, we were giving partial clearance to it, and two are absolutely something fishy. So yeah, that's how it happens.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. The next question is from Catherine Arnold. She's asking, how does DocSpire handle VAT invoice validation and extraction across UK VAT schemes, flat rate schemes, reverse charge, margin schemes, especially when invoice formats and required VAT disclosures vary significantly?
Okay, so this is like similar to the previous questions where I said, we have an extraction engine that first extracts all of these points, the VAT number, tax points, rates, and so on and so forth. Then we apply the validation logic that is specific to each VAT scheme. For example, let's say if it's a reverse charge invoice, the system can recognize the required wording
Hmm.
and make sure that the VAT is not incorrectly applied. For margin schemes, it understands that VAT is not reclaimable and flags it accordingly. So when we said that it's able to handle all of these different variations, the system is robust enough or battle tested to handle all of these variations. So we
Hmm.
simply saying that it really helps if you can also configure these rule based on your own compliance requirements. The system
Hmm.
is built for that. It's not like we have some inbuilt rules and one has to follow it. You also have this. So if something is
Hmm.
missing in your system, like a text point, if there's an incorrect VAT calculation, it gets flagged automatically,
Hmm.
either by your custom rules or by some of the inbuilt guardrails that already exist.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The next question is actually kind of interesting. This question is from one Brad William, and he's asking if the tool can handle standalone vendor credit notes. He had some challenges with some other tools that he was using to recognize incoming documents as a credit note, not an
Mhm.
invoice, and handling the negative amounts, etc. That's what it says.
Yes, this is again a very common issue, and I completely understand with this. And on that note, I would refer to the fact that this usually happens with most of the tools in the market that have a standard layout or a standard procedure, where a company, let's say anyone with this AP process, they are asked to follow that.
Hmm.
And in real world scenarios, it's mostly not the case, right? So most of these tool providers have this pretty happy flow that
Hmm.
would work for maybe a lot of the companies, but it doesn't for again a lot of the companies. And so all of these different scenarios, like for example in this case, he's talking about the vendor credit notes. The system, there are other categories that you can add to the system, so you can add your own custom categories. The system also flags the categories as other, and then prompts you to, hey, would you like to give more context for this particular
Hmm.
category that I can save in my memory, either as feedback or as mainstream instructions that I'll make
Hmm.
sure to follow in when a next document or a similar document comes into the picture in my system. So that's how it happens.
Nice, awesome. And I hope you got that one, Brad. Another question from the same person, actually, and this is a super interesting question again. So the question is, how does the solution perform across a global range of languages, including
Hmm.
non-Latin scripts like Chinese and Japanese? And are there any difference in accuracy or model training requirements?
Okay, so the system so far, like what we have tested, is for about 20, 40 plus different languages, and out of those 40 plus languages, there are 31 that have shown accuracies above 99.5 or 99 percent accuracy, and then there are certain low resource languages, which includes Vietnamese, Korean, and some Mandarin scripts or some kind of Mandarin scripts, I think different Japanese scripts. So if you're using, there are two different. I think there's a. I'm extremely sorry. I don't remember it correctly, but I think there are two ways of writing Japanese as well. So that also differs, right? So what we have seen is that with low resource languages, the system does get these accuracy dips, but to counter that, we provide feedback, right? We
Hmm.
constantly provide feedback, and so it's just that, hey, if your system has a low resource language, or if your invoice or document has a language that is not commonly used, system would take slightly longer to adjust to it as compared to, let's say, for example,
Hmm.
languages like French, Italian, German, English, which would just, in fact, even Chinese, for that matter, the mainstream Chinese out of the box.
Hmm. Thank you so much for that, Aisha. There were a lot of questions that I see that you guys have already answered, so I won't go over them. I'm just
Okay.
going to go over my one of my favorite questions, something that I found super interesting. So I'm just scrolling through. I see that someone is asking, will the solution be able to drive it using API from supplier master and ERP? And I see that this question is already answered.
I
There's
think I
another
answered that.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, you answered that. There's another question though. This is essentially related to EDI output. So the question is again from Catherine, and she's asking how DocSpire integrates with EDI outputs received from a customer in the transportation industry.
In the transportation. Okay. So it depends on what EDI format it is. The sad part is I'm not the EDI champ in the company. We have like a couple of people who are excellent at this, answering these questions
Mm-hmm.
in a more expert manner. What I know
Mm-hmm.
is that Estera has the EDI functionality, the being able to read, and the
Mm-hmm.
exchange part as well. Being able to track that, this document came in, it had some issues, and so it's being re-requested or
Mm-hmm.
re-requested. So that functionality definitely exists. I'm not the best person to answer this question, but for that, I would definitely ask you to schedule a quick demo with our experts,
Absolutely.
that are EDI experts. But what I can assure you
Absolutely.
is that, yeah, that is something I've seen myself working. Yeah, I'm just not the expert to answer that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think that's a wrap. These are all the interesting questions, and you guys have answered the rest in the chat. So, yeah, thank you so much. Big thank you to Aisha for giving me, honestly, genuinely one of the most honest takes on AP automation I've heard in a while. And thank you so much to Hira for making this live demo look so effortless and essentially linking it back to everything that we discussed to the slide. Thank you so much, guys. If you guys did not get a chance to scan the QR code, just scan it right now and book that personalized demo. I promise you guys it's going to be worth it. Absolutely 100%. Okay, now for the time that you guys, probably some of you, have still been waiting for, I'm going to announce the £100 gift card winner. All right, guys, let's give it a drum roll. The winner for the £100 gift card is Juan Brad William. Congratulations, Juan Brad. We will reach out to you directly and provide you with the details on how to avail that £100 gift card. Thank you, everyone, for joining in today and for spending this time with us. Hope this conversation left you something to think about, if not an immediate need for change. But thank you so much for joining in today and giving us this time in your day. Thank you once again, Aisha and Hera. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.